And so as some of you know, when I do this, I switch out my hat. So I wear this hat during every mission moment I do, and I've worn it during all 8 full marathons I've done now. And but it's a very special hat because this is my dad's hat. Wearing hats like this was one of the many quirky things that made him the person he was, whether it was jogging around our neighborhood or coaching our Little League team. You'd often see him wearing a hat like this. Sadly, my dad passed away in June of 2008 after battling non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He had gotten the cancer 3 years earlier, and that time the treatment went exactly as it should, got rid of the cancer, but unfortunately it returned, and the next time around he wasn't so fortunate. There are a couple things my dad often talked about in his later years which have a whole lot of relevance to the mission of LLS and TNT. One was, after beating the cancer the first time around, he often talked about just how thankful he was for the advances in cancer treatment over the years, and even though he only got 3 extra years out of all of that, those are 3 years that he might not have gotten otherwise. And the other thing he talked about after going through just, this really harsh world of cancer treatment, which is never pleasant, he just talked about how heartbreaking it was when he'd see children going through that process. He'd say, you know what, I hope I get to live a whole lot more years, but if for whatever reason I don't, at least I know that I got to live out my life, live to be 70 years old. But when I see kids going through this with their whole lives ahead of them, it's just ridiculously unfair. Well, that sentiment struck far too close to home less than 3 months after he died, when his 3-year-old granddaughter, my niece Kelly, was diagnosed with leukemia. And as you can imagine, for my brother Mike and his wife Trish, Kelly's parents, it's just devastating. I mean, under normal circumstances, when you have a 3-year-old girl, there are a million things in the world you worry about, but cancer isn't anywhere on that radar screen. But obviously that immediately became the number one concern. A few weeks after Kelly was diagnosed, I decided to sign up for TNT. Now, keeping in mind at this point, I wasn't a runner at all. I didn't have running a marathon on my bucket list, and it's never even would have occurred to me, like, why the hell would I run a marathon? But at the same time, even though it was just sort of out of nowhere, for whatever reason, it just made sense, because I was just overwhelmed with a sense of wanting to do something to honor them. Obviously, I couldn't do anything directly, for Dad anymore, and there was very little I could do directly for Kelly, but this was something kind of beyond myself and extraordinary that I could do to honor them. So fast forward to now, I mentioned I've done 8 full marathons. This is my 7th TNT season, and gotten to do a lot of great things, meet a lot of fantastic people. But far more important than any of that was what Kelly was going through in South Florida, where she lives. She went through 2 years and 2 months of treatment, and for a 3, 4, 5-year-old girl, there's a lot of stuff that's part of that. That's something that she should never have to go through. But that said, fortunately, everything went according to plan, and the doctors indicated an end date of November 20th, 2010 for the end of her treatment if everything went as it should. And thankfully, in her last checkup before that date, it showed no remaining traces of cancer, and thankfully she was able to finish her treatment on schedule on November 20th, 2010, and more than 2.5 years later, she remains a cancer-free 8-year-old girl. Yeah. So even though she cried on her first day of 3rd grade the other day, that's a relatively small problem that she and I always highlight a race that I did the day after Kelly finished her treatment, since there are a lot of powerful messages from that race. I did the Philadelphia Marathon a day later, and the biggest reason being to celebrate the end of Kelly's treatment. But it was also a great day to honor my dad, because that day happened to be my parents' wedding anniversary. And I grew up in about an hour northwest of Philly, and so my mom still is my hometown. She was able to come down and watch me, a lot of stuff coming together. And just as a little extra symbolism and inspiration on the course, there's a pretty prominent street in Philadelphia. It was windy that day too. Pretty prominent street in Philadelphia that was featured on 2 good-sized stretches of the marathon, including right before the stretch run, and the name of that street is Kelly Drive. And so just a ridiculous number of signs telling me to do that race. So I decided to spread my own inspiration on the course. I wore a sign on my back that said, "My niece finished her leukemia treatment yesterday and is cancer-free." And I can't tell you how many people during the course of that race came up and next to me and said, "Oh man, that is fantastic. I am so happy for your niece. Congratulations. I'm just so happy for her." And it's a lesson I want to impart to all of you, particularly those of you who are about to do your first half or full marathon, whether it's next week or October 20th, that on that course there's going to be a lot of positive energy out there helping you toward that finish line. Whether it's fellow participants, whether it's the coaches, which will include Chris and Lori on the course next week, helping you along, making sure you're okay. Whether it's the people on the sign holding the goofy signs, there will be a lot of them. I start to recognize some of them at this point. But, just a lot of energy that's going to help you cross the finish line. And as we've been telling you all season long, particularly the coaches, you will cross the finish line. So to wrap up this portion, I mentioned I've done 7 TNT seasons, all with the Westside team. So I've literally come to this parking lot at least 100 times on Sunday morning. And, it's, even though you do it every week, there's something special about that. By far the most meaningful one of those Sunday mornings was the week after Kelly finished her treatment, because I was able to come here and say the words that I wanted to say more than anything else when I joined TNT. And that was, my niece doesn't need cancer treatment anymore. And for all of you who are out here fighting in honor of someone that you love, I truly hope that someday we can say the same thing about everyone. So I want to thank you all. Yes. So I want to thank you all, not just for listening to me today, but for being out here every Sunday morning and for being an amazing team. And I'm very proud to be part of this team. And I'm not done yet.
Okay, those of you standing in the back, you are going to want to move just a little bit closer to create a shield so the noise doesn't come in. This is awesome. If you have a cell phone, feel free to record.
No, absolutely. So. All right, so this is a song I wrote over 2 years ago. It's about the TNT Marathon experience. Some of it's specific to the West Side. So I will mention a few things beforehand. One, I mentioned the full marathon distance and running, but whether you're running or walking, doing the half or the full, the song goes for everyone. And so this is a spin on Katy Perry's song Teenage Dream. I'm sure the first time all of you saw me, you thought Katy Perry looked alike. But my spin is called TNT. And I will add one additional note. A bunch of you have heard this before. Some of you multiple times, since I've done it for a bunch of seasons.
Never gets old.
Never gets old.
But I have some bonus material today. So none of you have heard this exact version before. Well, with 2 exceptions from yesterday. So, without further ado, here is TNT. They think I'm crazy, it's 26 miles long. You think I'm funny when I put my nip guards on. Before you know it, I'll finish a marathon. I was a novice, but the coaches were here to teach. Got my donations, my fundraising goal was reached. So now I smile with the stoners on Venice Beach. Smoking weed, let's go all the way today down San Vicente. Oh, this cause will make us cry, you and I. We will fight blood cancers, cheer for me, cause I am training with TNT. The folks in purple shirts, I can't wait till race day when I cross that finish line, My watch beats for the interval, have some goo, so my stomach's full, must hydrate. then run again and help kick cancer's ass, help kick cancer's ass. On Sunday morning, I could just stay in bed, but all the miles my body no longer dreads, it does get stiff. That's what she said. She said, let's go all the way today down south. Listen, take, though this cause will make us cry, you and I, we will fight blood cancers today. We will run, so our spirit will not be shaken. We can eat bacon when we're done. I'm gonna rock my race. I got shot blocks in my pocket. I'm a hunting, looking for my medal. TNT is awesome. I'll wear my purple shirt. I'll look incredible. I'll strike a victory pose at the finish line down the road. Oh, it's Sunday, Sunday. Gotta go run on Sunday. Everybody's looking forward to Disney and Nike. Sunday, Sunday. Stopping on cancer on Sunday. Everybody's looking forward to Disney and Nike. Go team, go team, go team, yeah. Go team, yeah. Run, walk. Looking forward to Disney and Nike. I'ma get my feet racing when you shout, go team, I'm with TNT today. I feel the Westside love for me when you shout, go team, I'm with TNT today.
Bring it in for a go team.